Hey you guys, it's crazy. Even with this filter on, you can see how red I am. And I had, oh my gosh. So here's the thing. I'm jumping on to talk about this eclipse stuff. I actually have an eclipse working I want to share with everyone. I talked previously about how a lot of my clients and even myself was experiencing like some strange physical manifestations during this eclipse season. And personally, for me, I had this weird thing come up and had to go on antibiotics. And the third day into these antibiotics, now I've never had allergies in my life. All of a sudden, I had a severe allergic reaction. I actually just spent the day yesterday in the ER being treated. And I have a filter on because I look like hell, you guys, but you can even see with the filter on, I had a T cell eruption. So my whole body, hives, red, inflamed, itchy, bumpy skin. Oh my gosh, I can't even explain how uncomfortable it is. I've been literally on Benadryl for almost 2 days now. So this is the second day. Anyway, it's so odd. I never have these kind of issues. A lot of my clients that have come to me like this weird physical thing is going on, they just don't have physical issues. I take very good care of myself. My clients, don't have any reason to be experiencing this either. It's, really at the end of the day, fundamentally, I think that this eclipse season is activating some really strange energies. And so, as this has gone on, and I've heard from more and more people, I've been working on eclipse reckoning reports at the same time for some of my clients. And I did a threshold ritual for a client, and this ritual actually is amazing in terms of working with this energy in such a way that it minimizes the impact, especially when we're talking about physical manifestations. And so I wanted to share it with everyone because I think it's a tool everyone should put in their toolbox right now. We're going to be hitting this apex in just a couple of days here. So things could get worse before they get better. So I figure if I can roll this out, maybe we can minimize that apex value that's going to be coming in about 2 days here. So let me walk you through the ritual. I just can't believe it. I'm so itchy. I keep telling myself, don't scratch yourself, right? It's so hard to do that when you're in the middle of a reaction like this. And they're like, oh, a day or two, but sometimes it can be a week or two. I hope to God it is not a week or two of inflamed, crazy. I mean, it's just crazy, you guys. I can't even believe it. And it's very humbling too. It's a good reminder to all of us third-party practitioners. We do all this spiritual work day in and day out, and I think sometimes we just feel like because of what we are doing for others and for the universe, that somehow we might be immune to the impact of some of these planetary influences. And we are not immune. So this was very humbling for me because I was just thinking, oh, I'll be fine. I'm a Leo rising anyway. I don't got to worry about it. Well, this was a good reminder that we cannot get complacent as third-party practitioners. Like, we need to be on top of ourselves, not just our clients. And it was a good reminder because this was such a weird thing. Like, look at this. It's so crazy. And I have a filter on. If I took this filter off, you guys would be, holy shit, Michelle. It is like crazy. Anyway, let me walk you through this eclipse working. I think it is going to be beautiful for everybody. I also think for all of you that have reached out to me that are having physical body manifestations during this eclipse season, it is going to be especially beneficial for you. All right, so what I would recommend, look up the exact date and time for the apex wherever you are in the world and try to coordinate this along with the apex of this partial lunar Piscean eclipse that's coming up in a couple of days, if you can. Now, of course, you have the shadow period, so you have, right now through a couple days after the apex, but if you can line it up with the apex, it's going to be that more potent for you. All right, so you're going to do all of this, if you can, the evening of the eclipse. I am going to walk you through. It includes a ceremonial bath, tea ceremony, a talismanic construction, and then an Isis ritual to kind of pull it all together. And so starting with that bath, it's an eclipse bath. This is the first thing I want you to do. And what you need for this bath, really, it's very simple things. You don't have to go crazy. Get some plain sea salt. I would do some dried calendula petals, and I put that in there because that's a solar Leo aligned herb. You can swap that if you need to, for something that's more Piscean, but I would maybe go with the solar Leo for the physical aspects. A handful of dried rose petals, a few drops of myrrh essential oil would be really great, or a small piece of myrrh resin. And what I would do with that resin is I would steep it in a cup of hot water first and then strain that into your bath. And then one cinnamon stick. Basically, how you're going to do this eclipse spiritual bath, this is the first part of the ritual, is just draw yourself a warm hot bath. Add the salt first. I want you to then add the calendula and rose, and then add the myrrh last. And then I want you actually add the myrrh and then set the cinnamon stick on top last. So as you add each one of these ingredients, I want you to say out loud, and it's important to say it out loud. We always talk about sacred words, sacred sound, sacred syllables, and that's very important when you're doing this kind of work. So use your voice, right? Say it out loud. What I want you to do is say out loud. It could be a single sentence. It doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't have to be anything, crazy, you guys. What you're trying to either minimize or maximize, or, what you're hoping that you can pull from this eclipse that's beneficial for you, right? I want you to get in and soak for at least 20 minutes. If you can do 20 minutes, that's great. And then at some point during that soak, I want you to submerge fully, right? Because it's an eclipse. That's kind of like a symbolic descent, right, into the eclipse's kind of dark before rising back out, right? So when you rise from the bath, if you can avoid drying off and try to air dry, you could do the tea ceremony while you're air drying. That would be really, really beneficial. Let the bath water just kind of drain, and then you can clean it up later. Don't worry about it. Then do the tea. So for the tea, chamomile, calendula again, rose hips, a pinch of dried hibiscus if you can do that, and then some honey for taste, obviously. Brew this right after the bath. If you're wrapped in a towel or a robe, fine, but air drying is great. I would not get fully dressed though. I would like you to hold the cup in both hands, and before drinking it, again, oration, right? Speaking out loud, just kind of, I would go through and name what you're choosing to open yourself toward in your own words. Again, you're giving this energy direction, you're giving it intent, so that it's not just kind of wildly firing wherever. You want to control it. You want to show it the path that you want it to go down. So drink the tea really, really slowly. And before finishing it, I would save just like a mouthful in it, because we're going to use that in the consecration of the talisman and for the Isis ritual. So the talisman, let's jump into that. I tried to keep it very simple for you guys. This is a talisman that's meant to be carried, okay? So you're not going to be burning this. You're not going to be burying this. It's not something that you really let go of. So you're going to be basically building this to travel forward with you through this workings window and through the next 6 months, right? So it's like a physical anchor in a sense of whatever this eclipse is asking you to be carrying. It's something to kind of anchor that energy, and you're directing it. Remember, you're the director. You don't want it directing you. This is where we're getting into problems here, is we're not directing things appropriately. Okay, so the materials for the talisman I want you to collect. A small brass or maybe a gold-toned locket. Michael's or Hobby Lobby has lots of choices, like a disc, a pendant setting, something that can be worn, maybe carried in the pocket. Make sure it has like a little cavity in it, or one of those little flat faces to hold the charge, and not just a loose stone, because we're putting a couple things in here. So when we talk about stone, the primary stone I think you should use for this, I would do a sunstone, if you can do a sunstone. That's for the solar charge that we had from this eclipse. You can swap it again for something more aligned, more Piscean if you want, but I think the sunstone is the best bet if you're dealing with physical manifests. The secondary stone, I would just do a small piece of black onyx. You could do obsidian, and I would set beside or beneath that primary stone. I would set this beside it, actually, because it kind of marks the dark of the eclipse. I keep going back and forth with how you should place these, but I guess at the end of the day, just make sure it's in there. I would do a pinch of citrine chips, maybe a few, I would do maybe a few grains of amber resin too, and just tuck that into the cavity if there's enough room in that setting. That's going to reinforce the solar layer. So then I would get a single length of cord or thread. I would do red or gold. I would make sure that it's long enough to wrap the piece 3 times. And I would do it knotted rather than cut. So that kind of represents continuity. So that's important when we're kind of setting energy out and we're directing it. It's what's being carried forward through this threshold rather than severed, really. It's what we want to symbolize. So that's what you need for the talisman. So in constructing the talisman, there's kind of 2 pieces to this here. The first part of this is go ahead and assemble that piece, right? Put everything together. You could probably start this while you're doing the tea ceremony, right? Because what you're doing is you're building the vessel as the door is closing. So you're sealing that working into it. And then, like I said, I would put that primary stone. Hopefully you're doing a sunstone if you're having physical manifests. Put that in first, then put the secondary stone in, so like the black onyx or obsidian. And then I would really out loud again, oration. I can't stress that enough. Say something like, and it doesn't have to be exact, you guys can, tap into your inner compass here, but something like, this holds what I'm stepping toward, right? Make it a very clear statement of intent, nothing wishy-washy. This holds what's being reworked in the dark, right? Be very, very, here's the thing where people get into trouble. You don't want to be like, I hope, or I wish, or maybe. It has to be very, very specific, very, very, this is happening, this is what I'm doing. Does that make sense? I'm so screwed up on Benadryl. I'm doing my best to make sense today. Anyway, moving forward, then you're going to take that cord, red or gold, you're going to wrap it around the piece 3 full times, okay? 1 wrap for each phase of this workings window, right? Because we have the opening, then we have the working through period, and then we have the integration period. So the opening started on the 12th, we're in the working through period, and integration will begin the 28th and span about 6 months. So you're going to finish with a knot rather than a cut. I keep getting cut off, so I hope you got that last part. You're going to finish with a knot. You're not going to cut it off. Then I would just hold that in your hands and just speak the intentions once again. How you're directing this energy. What do you want it to benefit? What do you want it to minimize in your life? Use your own words. The universe hears you. You don't have to rhyme or use special words, you guys. And then set it aside. Set it aside. We're going to go into the Isis ritual. Okay, so I chose Isis specifically for this reason. I love the dark goddesses, but with Isis, when a working is like an ending, so something else can be rebuilt, she is a beautiful deity to call in. Her myth is exactly that. She gathers what's been scattered and she puts it back together as something whole and living, which is why I like working with her. Okay, so I apologize. Like every time I sit down to try to do something, I keep getting emails and texts and phone calls. Anyways, I apologize. So we're in the Isis part of this ritual. So the one other deity I would suggest could be used as Lilith. Lilith is great if there is an aspect of refusal or rupture to your intentions. But for us having physical manifest this season, this eclipse season, Isis, I think, is the better of the 2 to be working with. So I want you to first set up just a makeshift altar for this, eclipse ritual. A white or cream colored cloth is fine for the base. I would do a white candle, and then I would do either 1 gold or 1 yellow candle placed side by side. I would have a small bowl of water kind of standing in for the Nile. That's Isis's own element, right? That's just another element really suited for this whole transmutation that we want to do here with this energy. If you have a little bit of that myrrh resin left, I would, maybe burn that if you have it as an incense. And then the talisman that you made, place that in the center of the cloth between the 2 candles. And then that last mouthful of tea that you saved in your tea ceremony, place, I would actually, place that right beside the talisman. And then for this specific working, I am sweating. I have a fever. Can you believe that? I mean, I have a literal fever and I'm sweating, but if I take this sweater off, I have the chills and I'll be cold. This is crazy, you guys. Anyway, light the white candle first, then the gold or yellow candle. I would either sit or kneel before the altar. I would begin close enough to if you can, again, to the apex, that exact maximum moment, that the working is kind of underway when it peaks. If not, that's okay. This is just kind of to maximize it if you have the ability to do so. I want you to speak your invocations out loud again, sacred sound, sacred voice. Adapt it to your working. So, like, for an example, I put, like, Isis, gatherer of what was scattered. I ask you to witness what I am reassembling in myself. What was broken, make whole. What was buried, help me carry forward changed. Very simple, right? Just a very simple statement. Pass that talisman really slowly through the incense smoke. I would do that 3 times, one for each phase of this working. Again, we're in that working through phase, and we're going into that integration phase. But you still want to include the opening. So I would do the 3 times. Then I would dip one finger in the bowl of water and touch it to the talisman, kind of marking it once right there in the center. And then what I would do next is I would pour that last mouthful of tea that you saved in your tea ceremony. I would pour that into the bowl of water as an offering. And I would just say something very simple. I would say something just very simply like, this is what I carry forward. This is what I leave with you. And again, you can use your own words, but I'm just giving you some examples here. And then sit with the candles burning for a few minutes. I would sit in silence before blowing them out. I would blow the white one out first, the gold or yellow one out second, and then leave that talisman. So I would let the talisman sit out overnight on the altar, just under the charge of the general working there before wearing it or carrying it is what I'm trying to say, for the first time that next morning, so the 29th. But yeah, I just thought this was a really great working that would transmute some of this more afflicted eclipse energy into something really beneficial and workable, and, kind of minimize the physical impact that some of this might be having on some of you. But yeah, I'd be interested in knowing what your guys' experience have been. Have you been having weird medical or health things, weird headaches, just weird anything with your physical body since the 12th? And what has that been? And how have you been working with it? I really am curious. I would really like to know, because it seems to be happening to more and more people that I'm talking to, and now myself, which is wild. But anyways, you guys stay magical, and we're almost through it. We're almost there. We're almost at the finish line.